What is up, everybody? It's the return of the Vish Kumaran show with Larry Krueger and Jessie Naylor. It has been a couple weeks since we got together on a Thursday. The Niners played last Thursday versus Seattle, and then the week before, Krug had some promotional obligations with the New York Sausage Company, and Jessie was out of town, so we were unable to do a show. But we are now back previewing the biggest game of the week, Niners Eagles. What's up, guys? How are we doing? Jessie, I see you were wearing flannel, a more casual look from you. You look like you're ready to go to the bar right now, not do a show.
Yeah, like a line dancing bar or something.
Oh yeah.
It's a rare cold evening here in Tampa. It's a brisk 55, so I'm a little cold right now.
You describing 55 as cold is just so bizarre to me, especially because we've had our first cold wave in Chicago this week. Monday and Tuesday. I think Monday was 16 degrees, and then Tuesday was 18 degrees. And then my face is not ready for it. I didn't wear a hat, and my face felt like it was freezing off. I felt like, do you guys remember the Tom Coughlin look in the 2007 NFC Championship?
Red nose.
Yeah, where it looks like that's how I felt. Krug, what's up with you?
Well,
how's everything?
It's 52 degrees in the creek today. And, it's funny, though, talking about really cold weather. I grew up in San Francisco, so I'm only used to, mild weather. And I went to New York in January a few years back for a Sirius XM deal. And so I had a hat to here, and I had the scarf up over here. And I just it felt kind of pinchy, kind of like your skin was being pinched. In 5 degrees across my face. And I'm like, why does it feel like that? It's so weird. Anyway, I got inside after a half hour outside. I took off the hat, took off the scarf, and I had a red line that went all the way. Looked like sunburn, but it must have been some kind of wind burn or snow burn or whatever. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say for people who live in the freezing conditions. My mom was born and raised in Chicago, and she used to tell me stories about, shoes that broke in half because they were frozen and walking to school. And I'm a wuss, man. I could not do it. I couldn't deal with that cold. I mean, maybe for a minute. I got at O'Hare one time. They said the temperature outside of O'Hare International is minus 30. And I ran out there. And I'm like, it ain't that bad. And then the guy, the porter goes like this. And I look up, and there's a gigantic heat lamp standing right above me. And it was, to me, I was like, oh, this is what 30 below feels like. He goes, walk over there. So I walked over there. Oh my God. I mean, it's just it's cruel. It's really, I don't know how homeless people deal with it. I don't know how anybody walks for, any period of time. It's freezing. Anything under 10, I think, is just freezing.
It's funny you bring this up because I like walking home from work. And so I work.
How far?
So I work at the Willis Tower, and I live in the River North Streeterville area, for anybody that knows anything about Chicago demographics or Chicago geography, not demographics, excuse me. And so it's a 30 minute walk. And so when the weather was mild, my walk would be along the river. So it'd be a very scenic thing, especially in the morning when you have to go to work. It's kind of a pain in the ass, put me in a good mood. The issue is for me, the reason I prefer the walk, and the walk was not a good decision. I'll tell you that. It was 18 degrees outside. I was not ready for it, is because the other aspect of it is I have to either wait outside for public transit. And the thing is, I'm so impatient, and I get so cold even waiting 2-3 minutes. I'd rather just be walking and feel like I'm somehow moving towards my house. About 10-15 minutes into the walk, I really began to regret it. But once you start something, you got to finish it. So I did do that. But you're right, it is difficult. And I know a lot of people, like you mentioned, that actually have to do that and have to walk outside for good portions of time when it's even colder. And yeah, I pity them as well. But Larry, Nees is getting right to it. He's asking you, did I hear right? Krueger at a sausage party?
That's right. It was a sausage party, New York style Italian sausage. It was great though, man. They had sausage bread. They had a table full of wine. They had cocktails, drinks. It was a good time. And I went there at 4. It was supposed to be 4 to 8. And then I got a note from you, Vish, going, I think you had something going that night too. And I'm like,
No,
what?
I had something going the next morning because I'm 5
Okay.
days a week in office, so I can't just because usually even if we run a little bit late and we start late, like Fridays, I can just wake up a little bit later and start my day later. But since I had to get into the office, I couldn't start the show a little bit later. And so I think the way I understood the event was it was like, black tie. It was like one of those things where, when they invite like all the premier TikTok influencers. To me, I thought the New York style sausage company was inviting the premier 49ers YouTubers. So I thought you were there, black tie, champagne in one hand. It was a big deal.
It was a big old family gathering of their, the closest friends of the New York style Italian sausage company employees. And it was a great time. It was a great time. But yeah, I ate a little too much. I drank a little bit too much.
And then Smack Jones 919, one of my favorite names of all YouTube commenters, says, or did I say 1919? It's 919. But excuse me. He says, it's the big 3. Let me roll one for this hot fire. Get ready to go. Get relaxed. We do have a hard stop today, so this won't be the usual 3-hour marathon show that people are used to. But I'm sure there will be a 3-hour show from the 3 of us somewhere around the horizon, so stay tuned. But guys, as much as I would love to continue chopping it up about the New York style sausage company, who, by the way, at this point, come on, Vish Kumaran show sponsor you. Like I mentioned you 4 different times in the first 7 minutes of this show. Come on. But we got to talk 49ers Eagles. This is arguably the biggest game of the season. We've got in my mind, from the week 1 to where we are now, are the 2 best teams in the NFL. What in my mind is the top 2 rosters when you just look at talent top to bottom on paper in the NFL. This is a big, big game. And it's a big game in terms of standings, not necessarily this week, but the subsequent weeks when the Eagles have to play Dallas and the Niners get to play out. We can see some real ramifications in terms of rankings and seedings when it comes to the playoffs. So let's get right to it. Jesse, I'm going to start with you. Who wins this game? What happens? Give me a score. Why do you think that team wins the game? Let's get right to it.
Yeah, I think the 49ers win this game 31-23. I think that there's an opportunity here that they can pull away from the Eagles. I really do. The Eagles are coming off of 2 high emotion games where they beat 2 very good quarterbacks, one very good team in Kansas City, an okay team in Buffalo, an above average team in Buffalo. But when Josh Allen is dealing the way that he was dealing on Sunday, that is hard to stop. And they were able to win that game regardless. Overtime game, the 49ers played on Thursday, which means they have the rest in their favor. I think the pass defense of the Eagles is absolutely atrocious. If they can't get home and they gamble a lot, there are yards to be picked up. And I think that Brock Purdy, Brandon Aiyuk, and the cast can certainly put up big numbers and go on the road and win this game and make a statement. I expect the 49ers to do that. 31-23 Niners.
31-23. I love it. Larry, come on. This is the pick everybody's been waiting for.
I'm saying 24-21 Niners. I mean, there's a lot to like about Philly, right? I mean, they've won, they're probably better on both sides of the line of scrimmage. At least on paper they are. But they've been outgained by at least 98 yards now in 4 straight games. They're not necessarily peaking. I heard today that Zach Cunningham and Fletcher Cox are possible to not play in this game. That's going to hurt their run defense. And I just also think that when you look at him, the Eagles are 19th against the pass. And if you look at it and you chart it across the last 6 weeks, it's definitely trending downward. And, there's a lack of presence over the middle. They used to have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They don't have him anymore. They do have Byard, who's a good player. But I just think that 49ers, if you close your eyes and think about where the Niners feast, it's generally in that intermediate middle. And I think they're going to own that part of the field again in this game with any number of players, from Deebo to Aiyuk to CMC to Kittle. And I think the 49ers are, I think the 49ers are going to lead like 24-7, and it's going to seem like a one-sided game, and I could see Philly putting a big second half rush to make it 24-21, but the Niners will do what they need to do to hold on for the 3-point win. And I think that, the other thing that kind of made me go, whoa, was that spread. I mean, Philly is the NFC champion. Philly's really, you beat the Niners last year. And the spread is Niners -3. And anytime I see a spread that makes no sense, I used to, as a younger man, go, hey, Vegas got it wrong. Now I tend to
right?
start to look a little deeper. Yeah, and I just don't. I see the Niners as 3-point favorites for a reason. I think it's going to come right in on the number. I'll say 24-21 Niners in a hard-fought battle, and I think this is the first of two. I think we'll get the rematch later on.
Larry, I have to ask you, if it rains like it did last week in the Buffalo-Philly game, does that change your prediction at all?
Yeah, I think it does, because I think it then I don't know if you guys caught this today. I don't know how dialed in you were on the Niners story today locally, but Purdy told us that he'll wear a glove potentially if there's enough rain, which really shocked me. Didn't think he would say that, but he says he's done it before at Iowa State.
Let's get right to then Alan from Coles' question. What is your opinion on if he wears gloves in the rain? Jesse, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the quarterback and what they're comfortable with. Glove, no glove. Some are comfortable with it, some are not. Peyton Manning famously wore gloves anytime it was cold or raining. That worked for him. Some quarterbacks choose not to. I do think it's
too, right? He didn't like it in Indy when he
yeah.
had issues playing outside of Lucas Oil Stadium, and then when he
Yep.
came to Denver post the neck surgery, and they were questioning how he would do throwing the ball outside in the AFC, he got very comfortable wearing those gloves.
Yeah, and I think a part of that was probably the loss of the feeling in the tips of his fingers from that injury. He probably didn't bug him as much, right? He didn't have to feel it or deal with it. So I think that there is something to that. But whatever Brock Purdy's comfortable with, I just want him to do whatever it is that he feels like he needs to do to play the best game possible. The thing about Brock, though, is a lot of people made a big deal about possibly his hand size because his stature is smaller, but he doesn't have small hands. So I don't think that's the issue when he plays in the rain. I don't even know if he's necessarily bad in the rain, but what I do know is arguably the two worst showings we've seen from him have been in inclement weather. Does that mean something? Does it not? I don't know. Time will tell, but whatever he's comfortable with, man, do what you got to do to win this game.
Larry, before I kick it to you, in regard to the small hands thing, I will say I'm evolving on that thought process. So somebody like Goff, when he came out, right? Great example of guy with smaller hands that struggles in weather. But Mahomes and Burrow, two guys who have hands on the smaller end of the spectrum, how well both of those guys have done through the early parts of their career throwing in weather has made me evolve my thought process on that. I have seen like some quarterback mechanics people talk about how these guys with smaller hands are now gripping further down the football or further up on the football. So now they're gripping not the roundest part of the football, but a place where they can get their hand fully around the football. So it's a less focus on gripping at the same spot for everybody and more on gripping as much of the football as you can and where you're comfortable with. I've never necessarily looked at where Purdy grips the football to fully analyze that, so I don't know, but I just wanted to add that in because I will say, from 10, 15 years ago when a guy with 9 1/4 hands would have issues throwing the ball in any weather, I will say there's been an evolution when you look at the Mahomes and the Burrow. Krug, what do you think on this? What do you think he should do with the gloves?
Well, I would try to go without it. I really would try to go without it because he hasn't done it a lot. The average male hand size in America is 7.4 inches. The average NFL quarterback, if you look at the guys who were drafted, the 40 first-round picks from 2008 through 2020, is 9 3/4 inch, 9.7 inches. It does matter. The biggest hands out there were Russell Wilson. He's got the biggest hands of any quarterback. I believe 10 1/4. Aaron Rodgers, 10 1/8. Josh Allen, 10 1/8. Guys with 10-inch hands in the league would be Stafford, Prescott, Herbert, Lawrence, Wentz, Tua. All have 10.
Kyler's close there too, right?
Kyler?
Yeah, I think Kyler has like 9 and
Kyler's
0.8.
9.5.
Yeah. Oh, he's
9.5
only
for
9.5.
Kyler. Yeah.
They just
Oh,
look
shoot.
big because he's 5'6".
Fair enough. Yeah.
Smallest
but I
hands
do
would be
remember his
Burrow.
hands not being. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Burrow's at 9. Tannehill's at 9. Goff's at 9. Carr and Justin Fields 9 1/8. Baker at 9 1/4. Mahomes is 9 1/4. So I believe
And Purdy's 9 1/4, right?
I believe Purdy's 9 1/4 as well.
And if you take that 9 1/4 threshold of the guys you named, I would say just smack dab 50% of those guys are pretty good in weather. Throw the ball fine in weather in terms of, hey, just they're able to throw the ball through the weather. And there's guys like the Carrs, the Goffs that don't necessarily do that. So it doesn't seem to have maybe the same indication of 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Would you say that's fair?
I think it's also kind of what you're used to, right? Like I think you can get used to handling a cold football if you're used to playing in the cold. If you're not, I mean, he played at Iowa State, so he's played in the Plains right there in the Big 12. He's played in a lot of cold weather football games. If you have small hands and you're from, a warm place, maybe that hurts you more. But I don't know. I think it's a little overdone. But I think it has a lot to do with where you hold the football and how well some guys really spin it and other guys don't have as much spin on the ball. If you have a lot of spin on the ball, generally you have a tighter grip on it, so there's other factors that roll into this thing, but I do think it'll be I would go without the gloves if I could, just because he hasn't thrown with gloves since he's been a Niner. So how much practice could he have? Shanahan was asked about practicing with wet ball. He's like, no, we don't practice with the wet ball. And he was like kind of matter of fact about it. Like, why would you ask such a dumb question like that?
He's answered it before. I don't know if you remember. So he's mentioned it before when he's been asked. His theory is basically that or at least his claim is that, hey, I don't want the wet ball. Like when we practice with the wet ball and all of that, it starts getting into the player's head that they have to play with the wet ball. So he thinks that if you practice whatever and just normalize the conditions, whether the balls are wet or not, he wants the players to not have that as another variable in their head. I agree with you. Him being so matter of fact about it is kind of weird when guys like Belichick and Peyton Manning, two of, some of the great football minds in NFL history, have talked about the kind of preparation they do with dumping the balls in water and doing all of that to make sure that their team is well equipped for that. So that's where Shanahan's dismissal of the question is kind of just him being a jerk. But that's been his reasoning in the past. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think this is also kind of his way of like, I don't want to discuss this anymore. Like he said that he had the same approach to the tush push. Do you practice the tush push? No. I mean, we could run, 10 in a row and see how many guys get hurt, but no, we don't. We have a plan. We talk about it. We discuss our plan. We'll enact our plan, but we don't practice it.
They can practice it all they want. They're not stopping that damn thing. It's just not going to happen. The 49ers, even last year, going back to last year, I should say, have been one of the worst teams on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. So that's a bad recipe going up against a team like Philly. They're not stopping that damn thing. So that at least I kind of agree with. What's the point of practicing that? You're not going to stop it. It is what it is. But the rain thing or the water thing does bug me a little bit. And it's not just quarterbacks. Catching in the rain is extremely hard. Tacky gloves lose a little bit of their luster when it starts raining the way that it does. It's very, very hard to catch the football as well. And I think if your team's as prepared as Philadelphia is for that weather, both receiving and throwing the way that they've played last 2 weeks in inclement weather, I think that's a huge advantage for them. I really do. We'll see if it actually rains the way that it is forecasted to possibly to, but if it does, man, Philly's got the advantage for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing with the rain that I'm worried about is you talked about the conditions. That's one. But here's where, to me, it differs from Buffalo, right? I don't know that Buffalo necessarily has a massive team speed advantage versus Philly, right? Philly played a lot of man coverage in that second half versus Buffalo because they realized other than Diggs, none of Buffalo's receivers are really going to run by their corners. And it's not like Bradberry can really run. It's just that Buffalo does not have good wide receivers outside of Diggs. Well, if you add this kind of wetness to this game, it slows down the 49ers advantage to me over the Eagles, which is their team speed. I think they are a faster team on both offense and on defense than Philadelphia. And so that's another thing about it that worries me. In regard to the gloves, I'm with you, Jesse, in terms of whatever he's comfortable with. I don't necessarily have a strong opinion on it. What I do have a strong opinion on is I don't mind him making a change to it, because the two opportunities we've had seeing him throw the wet football in the NFL, it has been his worst in terms of accuracy. The first part of the Seattle game, when the ball was a little bit wet, a few throws got away from him. And then the Cleveland game, once it started raining, he dropped the third down. That was a screen. That would have been a touchdown. The ball just dropped out of his hands. The pick to Aiyuk, it got away from him a little bit. The ball also came out spinning a little bit funny on a few throws versus Cleveland. It didn't feel like he had the same grip of the ball. So maybe if the glove helps with that, that's totally okay. We're going to get into the rest of the supers, but I'm going to just give my prediction real quick. And I'm going to make it a clean sweep. I'm also picking the Niners in this game. I'm taking the Niners 34-20. I don't think it's necessarily going to be 34-20 in terms of the Niners just blew them out. I think it's going to be a very close game that's going to end up that way. I just look at the game script and I think Philly starts slow, the Niners start fast. Philly runs down teams in the second half. The Niners kind of just hold their lead and their play diminishes in the second half. I think that game script is what's going to play out on Sunday. That's what past presidents has told us this year. I think that's what plays out, and I think the Niners just kind of hold on. Maybe I'll go 34-27. Give them an extra touchdown. So I'll take the Niners 34-27. Any thoughts before we get into the rest of these supers? Are all of us really that confident here?
I'm not super confident. Yeah. I'm not. I'm more hopeful than confident, to be completely honest, because there's one other angle, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I kind of could see this going where the Eagles have this unbelievable regular season gauntlet, right? And so far they've rampaged it. They've won every game. They beat Kansas City. They beat Buffalo. I could see them running through this gauntlet like undeterred and maybe with a perfect record, and then crapping out in the playoffs, because they did play a long time last year. And then they get that one extra game from the Niners. The Niners played a long time too, but I don't know. Look what's happening to Philly right now. Goddard's got the broken arm. Fletcher Cox is down. Lane Johnson's getting dinged up. Kelsey had to go back to the locker room before the overtime. Some of the age on their roster is starting to get hurt, and it's the end of November, and you got a whole nother month and a half really before the Super Bowl. I could see them being fresher now, running the table, and then getting to the playoffs and possibly getting upset.
That's why that number 1 seed is going to be important for both of these teams, because Philly, much like the 49ers, does have some aging players, especially some high contributors. Kelsey went to take a leak. That's why he went in. Yeah, that's all it was. So he wasn't hurt by any means. He had to go take a leak.
He made 2. Maybe that's what caused him to have 2 false starts.
Yeah, maybe he was a little antsy.
2 false starts on that last drive. If you're fidgety,
that human nature says that's very valid. Very valid. I know how it gets in those situations.
Dancing around like a kid.
I'm surprised he didn't just piss his pants, because there's many examples of NFL players who are just like, hey, what had to go, so it's been done before, that's for sure.
By the way, shout out to Taylor Broussard for becoming the first YouTube member of the show. Recently added it. We will be doing call-in shows on Tuesday. Members will get first priority for the call-in. It's the case of what happened to Jesse earlier that had me spooked about the call-in show. So this is the only way we can kind of regulate that to the best of our ability, because we just don't know how people are these days out there. Mother effing brother effing Bob's dash hyphen RLB2ESQ says, Nails and Vish, love you too. P&P, not so much. Shrugs. It's a love-hate relationship, because I think he really loves you, because he just, as much as he says he loves me and Jesse, every time he donates, it's just to talk to you. It's never to talk to us.
Do what you got to do, brother Bob. Old guys, us old guys got to stick together.
He now says, Nails, you can't squeeze in a quickie. Pause. Yeah, I'll pause too. I don't understand this. With X, well, what does this mean?
I have no idea. I'm not sure.
Jesse, are you doing something on the new Twitter?
I have no idea what he's referring to.
Alan from Coles, which, by the way, when we're talking about top names, Alan from Coles, I love that. He says, does the pass rush have a chance in the name? So in the rain, excuse me. So this is going, I think, along the lines of, hey, wet fields, wet conditions. It's going to be a little bit hard for them to get upfield. I'll start with you on this one, Larry. What do you think?
Well, first of all, Alan is actually he called the call-in show with me and Kev last night. He works at Kohl's in Indianapolis.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
Yeah. So he was working late last night watching the show, and we appreciate Alan. The Niner pass rush has been really, really good. They've got 15 sacks in the last 3 games. One of the things that Steve Wilks said today, which I think I've seen on film, just I couldn't verbalize it necessarily, is that Hargrave and Armstead look a lot fresher since the bye. And Armstead told me today in the locker room he's got the foot, but he is going to go no matter what. But that to me has been where the Niners have taken it to another level. And since they got Chase Young, Hargrave and Armstead inside have been noticeably, more juicy, more bouncy, more productive. They're getting in on the quarterback. Is it because of Chase Young? I'm not sure. It might just be because they got refreshed during the bye. But those interior guys are playing at a really high level. And I'll even say this, I think Givens and Kinlaw, when those guys come in, they're playing well. I mean, the interception that Ambry Thomas got on Thanksgiving night, Kinlaw had a big bull rush of the center and right into the back shoulder of Geno. I don't think he saw him, but he probably felt him. And that had a lot to – Ambry told me today he felt like that had a lot to do with the ball coming out when it did on that pass to the sideline to lock it.
Jesse?
Yeah, I don't know that it'll necessarily slow it down. I think if anything's going to slow it down, it's going to be an elite offensive line that Philly has. And I think that's what – there's a lot of little questions I have about the 49ers that potentially could be answered in this game. If Philly's offensive line can hold back the 49ers defensive pass rush, then I want to see this secondary get tested. I don't necessarily fully buy in that this secondary is all of a sudden locked down after the last couple weeks. I think the pass rush has been getting home much quicker. I think the game plan with the secondary playing up and close has been much more fundamental than it was going into the bye week. But I still have my questions. I'm still seeing players sneak behind the defense, and either quarterbacks aren't seeing it, or if they are seeing it, they're missing the throw. I want to see them prove it against a team like Philly. And I think Philly, with that offensive line and the receivers they have, is going to be a very, very good test for this secondary. And I'll feel a lot better about the secondary if they come out of this game playing the way that they have the previous 3.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair point. And I will add to it, I thought both Mooney Ward and Diamador Lenore, and Mooney Ward had kind of an up and down playoffs going into the championship game, played very well in that championship game. They took some chances playing some 3 deep and playing some press on A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith on the outside in the championship game. And both guys did a really nice job finding the ball and making a few plays and running with them. But, A.J. Brown is a different beast to me. Like, Metcalf is very good. A.J. Brown is one of the elite receivers in the sport in my mind right now. In regard to the pass rush in the rain, I'm with Krueg that the interior has improved a lot. I don't know if it's Hargrave getting healthy. With Armstead, I do think there's direct correlation to when there's 2 good edge players next to him, he finishes plays at a higher rate. We saw that in the back half of 21 when they kicked him inside. We saw it in 2019, as you mentioned, Krueg, with D Ford and Bosa, and now we're seeing it this year. But I think Armstead from week 1 to now, in terms of level of play, has been pretty high throughout. Javon Hargrave played pretty awfully in that 3-game losing streak for the 49ers. He was somewhat ghost town. They didn't get much of a contribution from him. He has really picked it up since they've turned it around in this 3-game win streak. I did see them mention something about a knee injury that he was dealing with at the time. So I wonder if now he's just a bit healthier than he was at that time in the season. And then you're absolutely right about Givens and Kinlaw, especially Givens in my mind. Givens, I always thought was a very good player. I think not as a backup, like he's a very good backup player. I think part of that was the early Baldy hype for him in preseason kind of had him on the radar for everybody. To me, the last 3 games, he's really played at a high level for the Niners, and that's been good.
One other thought on the tackles.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just from being in there today, I don't think I've ever had as many guys say things off the record in a 49er locker room, and I've been in there for 2 years, as I got today from people who whispered to me, "Hey man, Hargrave is fired up for Sunday. Hey man, watch out for Hargrave." I mean, I had DBs tell me that. I had O linemen tell me that. I had D linemen tell me that. Like, I don't know if Hargrave has talked a big game behind the scenes or if he's told them what this means to him. He seems kind of like a very cool, laid back, aw shucks, nothing bothers me kind of a guy. But he did seem to kind of indicate when he talked that this was not just another game, but then listening to his teammates whisper about it, I can't wait to see what Hargrave's got cooking on Sunday, because they made it sound like he's living for the outcome of this game.
I hope he is, because the guy that replaced him, number 98 on the Philadelphia Eagles, is a super duper star.
Yeah. And Forster said today, he said, you know what stands out about Jalen Carter? He's just so freaking explosive. He said he does things that like he doesn't ever see any defensive tackles in the NFL do. He says his explosive pass rush movements are like the best he's seen.
Best defensive tackle I've ever seen in college football, but I've also only been really watching of the last 5-6 years. But he was better than Quentin Williams in my mind. So yeah, but he's a bad man. What do you think of Hargrave's big game, Jesse?
I mean, I hope he has one. I definitely hope he has one. It'll be tough, but Hargrave's gone against the interior of the Eagles line a lot, and there's a lot to be taken from those practices. And maybe he's got some tricks up his sleeve that he remembers on how to get home and beat Kelsey and some of those guys on the interior or offensive line. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. The Eagles, we talk about interior defensive lines. I don't know if Cox is going to play. I don't know that it necessarily matters, because I think Milton at this stage in his career might be better than Cox. Yeah. He's very, very good. But if Cox does play, those 4, I don't know that there's a better 4 players that you can put out there than what they've gotten. The 49ers have a very good 4. I don't know that it's as good as the 4 that the Eagles have.
Yeah, I think it's the 2 best in the sport. I think maybe I would take the 4 of the Niners over the 4 of the Eagles, but I'm taking the Eagles entirety over the Niners entirety. Like when you
Milton Williams, though, doesn't he have the concussion? I'm not sure his status for this game.
I think he'll play. He was in protocol last week. He didn't play. I mean, we'll see, I guess. You never know with concussions, but usually
I thought I read that him and Goddard were trending to play.
Goddard did not practice today. And
but apparently Goddard promised he was going to play. Here's my thing. I agree with you that these guys don't practice, but when it comes to these kinds of games, everybody that's questionable seems to wrap up or put tape on it and show up to play these kinds of games, because these are the kind of games, that if you make a play in, you're changing your career.
Goddard says that he wants to play. The doctors are saying they want 4 full weeks, which would actually be Sunday.
Yeah, I think Sunday would be the fourth week.
Yeah, but so I don't know. We'll see. I think he's close. He's certainly going to play against Dallas. There's a reason they didn't put him on IR, but he may play against San Francisco.
So Chigo and Wagyu really wants us to talk some hoops real quick. Me specifically, he says, question for Vish, MJ or LBJ, who's better plus why? So maybe, 2-3 years ago, I'd have probably been a little bit more passionate about this. I would like to say I've matured with my age, in the sense that I don't necessarily see the value in debating such a thing. I'm a huge LeBron fan. LeBron's probably my favorite player. Been cheering for him just about everywhere where he goes. This is how I kind of look at their careers at this point. I think MJ had the greater peak. When you look at those 6 years that he had with the Bulls, like there's no 6-year stretch in LeBron's career that matches up with those 6 years, all the awards and all of that. But then LeBron's longevity, what he's doing right now, to me, he's achieved more than MJ did individually. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think MJ had the higher peak, but LeBron has just accumulated more just by sheer longevity and achievement, honestly, and greatness. What he's doing right now is just absurd. Him and Brady, man, I don't know what they did to their bodies, but it's crazy.
I would
you guys
say
have any
Jordan.
thoughts here?
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, Michael was the guy who came away with so many big shots. He was the better offensive player, but he was clearly the better defensive player. I mean, there's two ends of the floor. There's the offensive end of the floor, the defensive end of the floor. If you can have one guy taking the last second shot with the game on the line, with your life on the line, would you rather have MJ take it or LeBron? I think most people would say MJ. And then when you go to the defensive side of the ball, LeBron is a 5-time NBA all defensive first team selection. Jordan did it 9 times, and he would have done it 11 times if he didn't take those 2 years off. So Michael was on a different level defensively, and I think Michael was more of a better scorer. So LeBron's a better distributor. LeBron, to me, I always felt like the Jordan comparison didn't do LeBron justice, because he's not really shouldn't be compared to Jordan. He should be compared
stylistically different, right?
He's more like Magic.
Yeah.
I mean, LeBron made other people better, I think, more consistently than Michael made his teammates better. But I thought I kind of look at him more like a Magic Johnson. I think LeBron's kind of a more athletic version of Magic. I think that's a better comparison. To me, if you're going to compare someone to Michael, I think Kobe was more like Michael than LeBron.
We won't spend too much time on this, but Jesse, I know you've made videos on this in the past. I've heard you talk about this in the past. So I can't not let it go to you before we move on. So what are your thoughts?
I saw both of them in a majority of their primes, and I would have to say LeBron James is the better basketball player. I think that LeBron James is a little bit more diverse offensively. MJ was a great defender, but he also had the benefit of being able to check people and put his hands on people, to where LBJ hasn't been able to do that. I also look at the 2 guards that played during that time, and Michael Jordan really wasn't guarding a lot of great 2 guards back in the day either. And usually down the stretch, as they started winning those championships, it was Scottie Pippen that was drawing the tougher matchups between him and Michael Jordan defensively. So I would say LBJ. I also look at it, and people always bring up LBJ and say, all right, well, look at the teams he had compared to Michael Jordan's. And I think that that's the incorrect way to look at it. The way that I look at it is, what do their teams look like compared to the teams that they had to play in those finals? And Michael Jordan's team always had more talent than the people they were playing during those runs. They had more Hall of Famers. They had more All-Stars. His team with Pippen, you add in Rodman, they were the better teams than who they were facing.
Yeah. I'm sure we could spend an entire show talking about this. Maybe we should devote a Thursday in the offseason to really get into the weeds of this debate. I will say, Deron Bland, man, another interception for him. He
got cooked pretty bad. He was getting cooked early in this game.
He was. But yeah. I mean, the rate that he is getting interceptions, when Diggs comes back, it is wild. Though I do think Gilmore is the best corner on that team still.
Snap in and snap out, yeah. But both those guys are gamblers. I mean, between the two of them, they're going to create 15+ interceptions next year, easy.
Yeah, against the terrible teams. Daz0187 says, how concerned are you if the 49ers win? They'll become arrogant and drop off like after the Cowboys. Jesse, this is some team psychology. I know you love reading body language and psychology. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. My biggest concern the whole time is the 49ers lock in after the bye week. This is what they've done the last couple years. There was no reason to think that they couldn't or wouldn't do it again. It's not a surprise to me what they've been able to do. What I worry about is longevity of what it is that they are doing. Can they sustain this if they don't get the bye week? Last year they didn't run out of gas as much as the year prior. The year prior, they were definitely running on fumes, the way that players were getting injured in that Green Bay game. Not having the bye is crucial. We talked about it a little bit earlier. But this year, it's likely going to be 12 straight weeks to get to the Super Bowl. I don't know that any team can sustain that, let alone a team that's a little bit older in some of the key areas and a team that has made deep runs 4 out of the last 5 years. That is a lot to ask. That is my chief main concern. That's why, to me, the number 1 seed is so crucial. It's not that I don't think that they can beat Philly on the road or any of these teams if everything is even and they're rested, but you add in 12 straight weeks of having to do it, that is not easy to do.
Larry, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's hard to read. It's hard to read. Did the Niners fall off after Dallas because they believe their own press clippings? Or did they fall off against just good quarterbacks? I just tend to think that the best quarterbacks are going to give the 49ers a tough time. I mean, Cousins got really hot on third down. Joe Burrow played the best game of the year. And
you're forgetting the other guy, though, PJ Walker.
Yeah, but I mean, the 49ers, in my mind, that was a mucky, dirty, messy game. That was a game where the 49ers, I think, just were, they were up against a real physical team. I just don't know that we've given Cleveland enough love. I know. I just think that I get great respect for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think he was the guy that I really wanted when they used that pick on Aaron Banks. I just think he's one of the best young linebackers in the game. So he's having a great year. Then you got this amazing front line, and I think the 3 or 4 best DBs the Niners have faced this year is that Cleveland group. So I just really like Cleveland's talent. The Niners still had an avenue to win it. They just didn't. So I don't know. To me, look at the quarterbacks the Niners have faced. They've only beaten really one great quarterback in my mind. It's Stafford. And if you're a veteran quarterback, I think you have a very good chance to beat the 49ers. They've beaten some really bad quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach on this. I don't think that this is going to be an issue after this game, and here's why. I think the psychology of this game is a little different because I believe, even though I picked Dallas to win that division at the beginning of the year, I was trying to outsmart myself in terms of year-to-year turnover, all of those kinds of things. The fact that there hasn't been a back-to-back NFC East winner, all of those things. But Philadelphia is a much deeper intangible team to me than Dallas. Dallas has quit in it. Dallas is a very, very front-running team, right? If you can punch Dallas in the mouth before they punch you in the mouth, they'll quit. And that's what has happened against the 49ers a little bit. And that's kind of what happened in that game. Philly doesn't have that about them. I don't think Jalen Hurts has that about them. We've seen their backbone in every single one of these games. Yeah, they've gotten lucky at times, but we also see Phillies compete because they're, in adverse situations. They're down at home against Josh Allen, playing about as well as a quarterback can play in a game, which is what he was doing last week. And they do compete and they won't give up. And so because of that, I don't think the game is going to be as easy as the Dallas game was for the Niners. I think even when they walk out of this game, even if the Niners do win, they're not going to be smelling their own roses. They're going to know that it was a competitive team, a competitive game, against a team that they're likely going to see again. I don't think they view the matchup versus Philly similar to Dallas because I think there's more respect for Philly as a football team. And I have more respect as well for Philly's intangibles as a football team than Dallas. I don't think that they would create that sort of. And you also have to understand when they whooped Dallas was whooping everybody else, right? Dallas came into that game kicking everybody's butt by a lot outside of Arizona. So when the Niners beat them up, it was like, holy cow, are the Niners like the best team we've ever seen? And remember, that was when we did a show and we said, is it more likely that the Niners lose 3 more games from here, or is it more likely that they go undefeated? And we said, it's more likely that they go undefeated, and bang, they lost 3 games in a row. So that's how it felt at the time. I think we're at a different point in the season, and we're talking about a different psychology here.
I want to point this out, and I think that this is something that is overlooked as to why Philly is able to win the games that they are. they have a lot of championship pedigree on that roster. You look at some of the carryover players from the Super Bowl, that's one thing. But the way they draft players from Georgia and Alabama, a lot of those guys have recently won national championships as well. So those guys know how to play winning football. And that is a bit of a concern. Maybe not so much for this game, but if the 49ers have to go to Philly in the playoffs, regardless of how this game turns out, I'm not super confident that a team with, I believe, one Super Bowl champion on it has the know-how to get it done. And that's going to be a concern until they prove it to me in the playoffs that they can get it done.
Yeah, and to me, that's the culture that stems from 4 players, right? Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. Shoot, I was talking about it with my dad earlier today. I can't believe Brandon Graham is 35 years old. I still remember when he was drafted in the first round and everybody said he was a bust after his first 2 years. They said, oh, Andy Reid screwed up by drafting Brandon Graham. And so having those 4 players constantly play at a high level, those 4 players always seem to put the team first. It seems like the culture around them is what's created in terms of the defensive linemen that come and play well around them or the offensive linemen that come play around them. I absolutely agree with that. Brother Bob is back, and he says X for the Philly YouTube guy. Come on, Nails. Bet.
Oh, he's talking about a bet. So I had a guy on yesterday, went by X. So he wasn't talking about Twitter X. He was talking about the guests.
Oh, shoot.
There's a bet that we already made a bet.
Is that like a pseudonym, like X? Like he's a mysterious,
yeah. So we made a hat bet, and he wants to up the bet on my behalf. I'm like, no, bro, I'm not. It's my time that you're taking away. Absolutely not.
What's is it the hat bet?
Yeah, so I made a similar bet with the Cowboys content creator. Loser has to wear the opposing team's hat on a stream. The difference is, 2 differences with this one is that whoever wins, the winning team gets to pick the loser's hat that they have to purchase. And then when they play in the NFC Championship game, because I do believe these 2 teams will play again, that person has to come onto the stream again wearing that hat. So Brother Bob wants to up that and do a stream this week wearing the hat. And I'm like, listen, man, my schedule is tight as it is. I can't make another hour for a random show for out of nowhere. So no.
Is this going to be your hat or his hat? You have to buy a hat, or do you have to?
No. I picked the hat. He has to buy it, but he has to wear it on his stream, and it's his it's his hat, but it'll be a 49er hat, and vice versa if the Eagles win.
See, that's painful. Just have to buy a road team hat.
I know.
That is pretty bad. Brother Bob, he says 34-17 49ers over Fugly.
Doesn't it make us nervous that everybody's picking the Niners?
Okay, so when you brought up the betting lines earlier, for me that was making me somewhat nervous. It's not I understand why the favoritism is to the Niners, right? Philadelphia has the second lowest point differential for a 10-1 team in NFL history. They're like the anti-Baltimore. Baltimore, I think, for an 8-3 team has a very high point differential. I think everybody who's had the same point differential as Baltimore has started 10-0 or 11-1 or 10-1 or something like that. I don't remember the stat exactly. But Philadelphia, on the other hand, has a very low point differential, right? They've been in all these kinds of close games. The Niners have looked dominant. My issue is, in whenever has a 10-1 team been a road dog, not like a road pick'em where you're saying, oh, essentially the Niners are favored, a straight up road dog. This is, I was talking about it on another stream. This is like the fishy stuff where you open up the bets for an NBA, Wednesday night, and all of a sudden you see that Boston's only -3.5 at home versus Orlando. And you're like, what's going on here? And you slam it. And next thing you know, some fishy things happen in the game and the Magic cover or something like that. So that's what this feels like to be a little bit. There is a little element of, oh my God, is Scott Foster reffing Chris Paul? Do we slam the other team? That's where it gets a little fishy to me. But for sure, I understand why the Niners are favored. But the 3.5 versus a 10-1 team at home, whew.
By the way, since I last saw you guys, I had one of the worst bad beats I've ever had, ever.
Degenerate Larry's back, baby.
Listen to this one. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. I have to share this. Iron Bowl. Did you guys watch the Iron Bowl?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You had Auburn?
I have Alabama. They were giving 16. I said, that's too much. Or maybe it was 15. So I took them on the teaser, 7.5-point teaser. So now I'm giving 8. As I'm watching this game, I'm like, they're not going to cover. Auburn's right there with them. Anyway, Milroe throws the touchdown at the end of the game, and Alabama unbelievably comes up and gets the win. But of course I still lose. But then Auburn gets the ball back, and the guy throws an interception on the last play of the game.
Yeah, Peyton
And
Thorne.
the guy picks it out of the air and runs. I think it was Terrion.
Yeah.
Who's a really good corner. I hope the Niners
runs it
get
back for 6.
Runs it back for 6. They show at the bottom of the screen, 33-24. They're up by 9.
They didn't count it, right? They didn't count it.
Well, so I'm sitting there and I'm on the phone with Kev. I'm like, yes, unbelievable, unfreaking believable. And he's like, Dad, that's the most amazing win of all time. I'm like, I know, I can't believe it. They do the whole talk on CBS. They're about ready to sign off. And then they're like, all right, everybody, tune in next week for the SEC championship game. Georgia and Alabama. By the way, that last touchdown didn't count. Have a great night, everybody. I'm like, what? I don't know what happened. I don't know if the guy's knee touched down or if he stepped out of bounds. I don't know. He ran it back for a touchdown.
That's funny.
They won by
that's
9,
funny.
but instead, no.
Yeah, that is a bad beat, Krueg.
Bad beat.
Nees says Young finally plays against the Eagles on a legit team. And yeah, Chase Young has had success against the Philadelphia offensive line in his career. 3.5 sacks in 4 games. Statistically, he has been very successful versus a good offensive line.
Can't wait to see it. He's very, very cocky. When you talk to him, he's like, anything they can do to us, we can do back. I mean, he's just like, I can't wait for the game. So he's very confident.
He probably, I assume he has the vibe because he's been that guy. But you know the guy that's been the best athlete on his field from elementary school to middle school to high school to college to he walked into the NFL and it's easy and it's just like an athletic arrogance. Like Jalen Ramsey's a guy that to me just like represents that. Like he walks around knowing he's always been the baddest dude. I get that vibe from Chase Young too. Is that the vibe? He's just
he's a bad man. It's like, I give you the other day after the game, the home game was at Buccaneers. He's doing an interview in the locker room and he's got just a ridiculous, the chain that he had was just like, it looked like something you'd see on like Academy Awards or something. It was just the blingest of bling. Right. And then he's got a fat lipper going. I mean, he's got a big old Kopi in one side, and he's got the chain. And
Big
I'm like,
red?
And I said to the PR guy, I'm like, hey man, he's got the drip in the lip. Look at that, the drip in the lip. And the PR guy thought that was funny, but yeah, I mean, he had serious chain, and then just the biggest dip of all time. I mean, he must have had half the can in there.
Was it Big Red?
No, I think it was probably. Most I would go. I mean, if it would have been me back in the day, I would have gone with Copenhagen. But I think Greenlaw told me it's Grizzly. Guys like dipping the Grizzly. Grizzly.
I see. Brother Bob is. Oh wait. No, first we got to get this from Brother Bob. He's Krueg. He went from. This is the great thing about this show. In 50 minutes, we can change a relationship. Dr. Phil, I'm coming for you. I just turned down around this relationship between Brother Bob and Larry Krueger. He says, wow, I agree with PP. MJ by far better than LJ. Era's different. I think eras are different, but I think when you start looking at, hey, there were a couple expansion teams in the 90s and stuff like that, you can start making some arguments that make things interesting. Brother Bob now comes right back. Never mind. We're not Dr. Phil. We didn't achieve this. He says, Nails and Vish should trade Pig and a Pickle for the coach. How would that work, Larry? What do you think your value is? You think you're a 2 first-round pick guy? You think it would take it? You would have to throw in?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I think if the coach comes, he's got to bring Tannehill with him.
That was a cheap shot, Larry.
That's tough. But at least we did bring up Tannehill earlier in the show, right? The 9-inch hands. He's a guy that threw the ball well in weather for 9-inch hands. in Tennessee.
Coach has been going off on the Krueg show on Saturday. Some of the biggest streams we've had in the last 6 months have been the coach on Saturdays.
I'll say this. That's my favorite YouTube show, the two of you. And I heard that there's some popular people that really enjoy that show as well. That's just a rumor on the street. So shout out to both of you.
Seriously, he's gotten some love from some pretty high up people.
He's the man. He's the man. By the way, tune in to me and the coach doing the post game after the Eagles-Niners game right here. You don't want to miss that. Matt McCowan, thank you. By the way, appreciate everybody for the donations. Thank you so much. He says, running quarterback with a good RPO game, our kryptonite. So let's get into this matchup then off Eagles offense versus Niners defense, right? I'm going to preamble it a little bit, and then I'm going to throw it straight to you, Jesse. The one thing I will say to this is, when I went back and watched the NFC Championship game this week, I thought the 49ers defense played very well in that football game. I think what happened is they had to deal with the early situation without them having the quarterback. The Niners offense got to a point where it was so inept that they couldn't move the ball. And the Niners defense, there were two things that I thought went wrong for them in that game. One, they got penalized probably a little too much. They were a little undisciplined. And two, they started realizing that they were going to have to score for the Niners to have a chance in that game. They not only had to get stops, but they had to score as well because the 49ers offense was so inept. And that's when you could feel players starting to press. You could see that they were starting to look to turn this around. Like, we're in the NFC Championship game. We got to find a way to win this. And that's where they were looking to create plays that weren't necessarily there. I think when you looked at the overall plan and you looked at how they played, especially until the second half when they started getting moved a little more in the run game. And I thought that was because they started taking a little more chances in terms of guys taking chances into gaps to make plays and create huge negatives. They had success in that game. I thought their defense played well, and I think they're well equipped to match up with the Eagles offense, especially at seeing what Kansas City did to them, especially seeing what a very, very injured Buffalo defense did, just playing quarters, playing three deep, and being disciplined and rotating coverages and mixing it up a little bit well. I don't like the Eagles offense with Brian Johnson nowhere near as much as I liked it with Shane Steichen. I think that at end of games, they're having talented players come through for them, but I don't know that there's a great schematic flow to their offense at any point this year. I like the Niners defense's opportunity a lot in this game. Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, the Niners defense plays fast. They're elite have elite players, I should say, on all three levels. So yeah, I mean, the 49ers defense is very, very good. I don't know that there's a lot of teams that can catch them by surprise. I think Baltimore and Lamar might be one of them just because Lamar is such a different beast, and we'll see how that game goes in a couple weeks on Christmas. But I think the Eagles present interesting problems. I think Swift is a lot more explosive than Sanders. I think the good offensive line with the option to hand off to Swift, keep it himself and Hurts, or be able to throw the ball, definitely presents interesting issues. But I think the 49ers defense is going to be game. And I really think that 3 extra days to prepare and then also watch them play to make sure that they're confirming what it is they're seeing on film and coming up with that game plan, I think that's going to be crucial as well.
Krug?
Well, there's two things. One, I mean, my recollection, sometimes your recollection is one thing and then you go and look at the numbers and you stand corrected. Okay, my recollection was the Niners got gashed in the NFC Championship game, that they got run on, that they got moved all day, and that Kinlaw got kicked out of the club and they got embarrassed. Guess what the Niners averaged, or guess what the Eagles averaged per carry in the NFC Championship?
Less than 4 yards, right?
3.4 a carry. That's totally fine. They ran it 44 times though, because once Purdy went out, they're like, hey, we're not taking any chances with the ball. We'll just run. And they ran 44 for 148. So they almost ran for $150, but it was on 44 carries. So the Niners did a better job against the run last year than I thought they did when I watched the game in real time. As far as this game Sunday, I thought Bosa made a great point this week. He's like, we have to rush as one. And I thought they did a great job in that Seattle game. It seemed like every time they went to sack Geno, they were sacking him with two different guys from two different angles. They did a great job of not giving Geno any kind of rush lanes And to me, that's I'm not as worried about the design quarterback runs. And I'm not, because I mean, Greenlaw, Warner, probably the fastest duo on the second level. Jair Brown's very aggressive. I like the Niners in the designed runs. I'm more concerned about the scrambles, and getting out of your rush lanes and playing a few too many games up front and giving Hurts an obvious rush lane. Because the one thing that I think makes Hurts so good is that he can burn you with designed runs. They can burn you with handing it off. They can burn you with passing it. But then if you just get out of your rush lanes and he drops back to pass, he'll quickly pivot and be like, oh, you know what? He shows great patience, and he'll just take that run lane. So I think, the big key for me in this game is, can they put heat on Hurts? Can they shrink that pocket, but can they do it without giving him a lane? And if they can, I think if he can't scramble for big plays more than once or twice in the game, I think that's going to be a win for the Niners.
I like that. And I'm glad you brought up the rushing attempts. I don't want to spend too much time here because we do have a lot of supers to get through. So I figure we'll just let the topics organically come from those. But I think one interesting stat in this game to me is that both these teams are top 5 in rush defense this year, but they're also the top 2 teams in least attempts against them, which means that they're kind of scaring teams into being one-dimensional. And then once they get them one-dimensional, they're letting their pass rushers eat. But in terms of yards per carry, I don't think that they're like too excellent. I think both give a little bit over 4 yards a carry. And what's interesting is both of these two teams also are top 5 in rush attempts each. So you have this funny dichotomy where both of these teams run the ball. Nobody really runs the ball against both of these two teams, but they're not like totally excellent against the run either. They're good against the run, but they're not totally excellent. And it's going to be really interesting because we know both these teams in terms of their identity are going to stay connected to the run. And the question is, how well are each other going to do stopping each other's run game? To the next one from Flav. Good to see you. We're going right back to LeBron Jordan. Look at that. He says most NBA players would take LeBron over Jordan. The difference is in their mentality. Jordan would elbow his son in the face to win a father-son game. LeBron is a better human being, worse ball player. I don't know how to react to that one. Dang, is it a good thing that he would elbow his son in the face to win a basketball game? Maybe that's why his son's dating Larsa Pippen.
I don't know. I think the legend of Jordan and his you always want the ball in his hands, and he's gonna hit every game winner.
Commercial. Be like Mike.
The stats just don't back that up. They don't.
Krueg, what do you think? Would you elbow Kevin in the face to win a game of 1-on-1?
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm not going to evaluate people I've never met as good people or bad people.
Right. I'm not doing that either.
True.
That's just
fair.
They for all we know, they're both the worst person that ever lived.
That's also
what I mean.
true.
We don't know.
That's fair. Flav also says, thank you, by the way, for both donations, says Jordan over LeBron. Maybe we should spend an entire show going over that one. Alan from Coles. Got to shout out Alan. He says, what matchups are y'all excited to see on Sunday? Larry, I'll start with you on this one. Give me 2 matchups, one on Eagles, or give me 4 matchups, one on each side. So Eagles offense, Niners, or 2 matchups, excuse me. Eagles offense, Niners defense, or Eagles defense, Niners offense. Give me 2 matchups you're excited to see.
Well, I'm really excited to see Ambry Thomas against Devontae Smith. They matched up in the bowl game. Ambry got the better of him, according to Ambry. Devontae won the Heisman. He's coming off a 100-yard day last week. He hasn't had the best year, but Ambry right now is playing incredible football. The interception that Ambry had against Lockett is a tremendous route runner. You guys know that. And there was no wasted steps at all when you watch the All-22. It was like his footwork was impeccable. And I'm looking at that going, wait a second. Is this the young player that has had a hard time getting on the field and staying on the field? How could he just have absolutely like all-pro kind of caliber footwork? But he did. on that
Such
play
a
where he got the
confident
pick.
play too, right? Such a
Oh,
confident play.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. His footwork is just tremendous. His 4.4 flat speed is really impressive. So I'm eager for that one because if Ambry has the physical gifts to shut down Devontae. He's bigger and stronger, but and probably as fast, if not faster. So I love the potential for that matchup. That's one. The other one is going to be Hassan Reddick on Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz, talked to him for a minute today. Didn't get a chance to ask him about Hassan Reddick and talk to him about Hassan Reddick. But I think that's absolutely huge. Reddick was, you guys know, Reddick was good in Arizona. He's a star in Philly. He's continued to work at his game, and he's really fast at getting to the point where he flattens to the quarterback, but then he's exceptionally fast once he turns the corner and flattens to the quarterback. So he's always run well. He's only about 240 pounds. McKivitz told me that he prefers to block the bigger guys, the Trayvon Walkers, right? This is going to be a monumental challenge for McKivitz to be able to keep up with the speed of Reddick. So I'm looking at that one. And then, like, how are the Niners going to help McKivitz? And so I'm, how would they help McKivitz against Reddick? Because I think he's going to need some help. And then Ambry against Devontae. I'm hoping Ambry can shut him down.
What about you, Jesse? Same thing. 2 matchups, one on each side. Forgive my math there. That one's now.
I knew where you were going with it.
Yeah.
I knew where you're going with it. AJ Brown versus
Mooney Ward.
Probably Mooney, because I think Mooney's going to travel. So I got to see that one. But the matchup of all matchups, and I can't believe you didn't go here, Larry. This was the easy one, the low-hanging fruit. Deebo and Bradberry. Come on, man. This is a year plus in the making. He called them trash. This is the matchup that I want to see. Hopefully, we get to see it multiple times throughout the game and see who does what and who's really who. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Who do you think's going to win that? Because Bradberry was the veteran who basically didn't, when he was asked about this, you guys saw the film probably in the locker room. He wouldn't bite, man. He would not bite. And then Deebo,
he had a big grin on his face, but he wouldn't bite.
Why does he need to talk, right?
Way too much class, too, right? I even when you're listening to him as a fan as well, and this is kind of what ticked me off. Like, as a fan, you want him to go lower so you can be even more hyped about Deebo.
Yeah.
But he took such a high road that you're like, damn, now I feel kind of mad, or I feel kind of bad that Deebo just called him trash.
Well, and then Deebo told Kay Adams, hey, we'll see you out on the field. Or was that
about the Reddick response?
That was more about Reddick. That was towards Reddick,
yeah.
But he said he doesn't take anything back.
Though?
I would say, the one thing about Bradberry is that I think Bradberry is the biggest gambler in the league. Nobody gambles like James Bradberry. He doesn't have that same quickness that he had coming out. He's got to be 30, 32 right now. He's a little bit long in the tooth. And I just think that he is the guy who you really got to be afraid of, because he will gamble and he will get picks. You know what I mean? He will gamble on the out, and Purdy, he hasn't had too many corners as smart as Bradberry. Bradberry will set you up, and he will literally make you feel like he's in a trail position or he's a step slow, and then he'll just change the angle and break on the ball. His break is faster than his 40. So Bradberry scares me a lot. He does.
Yeah, he had a really nice interception on Sunday. I don't know if they were playing palms on that play or if they was just playing cover 2, but it's a really nice play from him regardless. Oh wait, let me give my matchups real quick. Yeah, so you guys picked some of the best ones. So I'll go in 2 different directions just to add 2 more matchups. Christian McCaffrey in the pass game versus the Eagles linebackers. I want to see what happens there. Basically, I want to see how they match him, to be honest, because I don't know how they're going to be able to cover him in this game. And then the second one is the Niners played a lot more aggressive man coverage and a lot of single high versus Seattle. Now, I think part of it was their confidence that their corners could play like that against a good receiving core in Seattle, and their corners proved them right. But to me, it was also getting Jair Brown ready on a short week. They kind of stuck him in the post for the majority of the game, and I felt like that was just to make things simpler for him. And so I want to see Jair Brown, if they're going to put him in the post again. It's a very different game in the post versus Philly, because Jalen Hurts, if he sees single high and sees press with A.J. Brown, they're going to take shots. So there's two things I want to see. One, Jair Brown's range, hash to sideline, and all of stuff like that, playing single high. I think it exists, but I would love to see what it looks like against this football team. And then two, we didn't really get to see him make any tackles from the post in terms of coming down and have to stop a guy in the alley and make real tackles in the open field. Seattle's run game never really got to the second level. Philadelphia's run game will. They will open up holes for DeAndre Swift in this game. And so I want to see how Jair Brown does tackling coming downhill in those situations as well, especially if they're going to play single high. This was something Jimmy Ward, for example, very, very exceptional at closing space quickly and tackling very cleanly in the open field. I want to see what Jair Brown does, how quickly he comes downhill, where he triggers, where he meets the back, all of those kinds of things. Flav goes to the Dallas game. He says, assuming Dallas wins, 49ers win sets up a huge Dallas-Philly game with crazy playoff implications. 49ers loss and nothing really matters. NFL should want 49ers. Krug, this is right up your alley. I saw you tweeting things about Sean Hockley, Warren Sharp, 4-0, this and that. It felt like I was seeing some Scott Foster allegations after a Chris Paul game. Talk to me about how you feel about this one, because you are the betting shark. You are our resident
what's
shark.
he saying here? He says, assuming Dallas wins tonight. Is that what he's saying? The 49ers win sets up the Dallas-Philly game with crazy playoff. Niners lost. Nothing really matters. Does nothing really matter if the Niners lose? I thought
not really.
Really?
I mean, the only thing that would matter at that point if the Niners lose is who gets the number 2 seed between Detroit and San Francisco. But
right. They would be pretty much, Philly would have, it would take a monumental, like a catastrophic end of the season for Philly for them to lose the 1 seed at that point.
I guess you'd have to work back from who you don't want to play. Like, I know some people don't want to play Dallas and Philly. I don't want to play Detroit and Philly. So where would the Niners have to land to not get both Detroit and Philly?
Number 1 seed.
That's the only way. Otherwise, they get Detroit.
Because I feel like we all feel like Detroit's going to lock up the NFC North. Philly's going to win the NFC East. And I think we think that those are the 3 seeds, right? I don't think anybody thinks an NFC South team is going to magically win out and somehow creep into the first 3 seeds. No. So in the case of that, you would have to be the 1 seed to avoid 2 and 3.
Yeah, so that's what I would like to avoid.
2 and 3 in the same playoffs. Excuse me.
Sorry. I wouldn't. I'd like to avoid Detroit and Philly. I just think Dallas is a great matchup for the Niners. I don't think Dallas has any real belief they're going to beat the Niners. I don't think Dallas can stop the Niners' run. I think the Niners can stop Dallas's run. Detroit bothers me more because it just seems like they play with such intensity, and even though they don't have the talent on the back seven, they just find a way to keep those games close.
I don't know that a year away in the front. Exactly, on defense. Maybe their offense, although the quarterback that I know Jared Goff to be is starting to finally rear his head. So it's at least nice for me as a Goff hater that has had to eat my crow the last 2 years with how well he's been playing. A personal agenda there. Now, talk about personal. This is straight up personal. He says, PP, I'm so glad you lost. This is brother Bob. And he says, Kev is the best Krueger. Wow.
Well, and as I said, I've got other sons that, could put Kev to shame. Kev's the first, but I mean, there's, it's like there's better guys coming.
He's Lonzo.
Kev played baseball and football. Yeah. Number 2, Ben plays baseball, but the third guy, he's
LaMelo Ball.
He's monster. He could play baseball, football, basketball. Christopher could be coming for Kev's title.
Ooh, he does. Kevin doesn't even get the respect of being Kevin. Christopher isn't Chris. He's Christopher. Wow.
That's right. It's Kev and Christopher.
Matt, he said I pronounced his last name wrong. Apologies there. Matt McCown, I'm going to go with this time. You let me know if that's
What did you call him last time?
McCowan.
I think it's McCune. That'd be my
McCune.
guess.
I think McCune is correct, actually, now that I look at the letters. I'm going to go with McCune. I hope that's correct. Sorry about that. Thank you for the donation. Wow, this is just Interact with Larry show. He goes,
What did he say?
He goes, PP, why is it when Steve Young says what we say about Purdy, it's okay? Does anybody know what Steve Young said about Purdy?
I don't.
He
Jess,
he talked about his anticipation being a lead, and then he said, Brock Purdy's always his arm isn't what some of these other guys' arm is, so he's gonna have to play on time all the time. And when some of these other guys go 3 for 3 down the stretch to win a game and get their team in position, he's gonna have to go 5 for 5, and he's just gonna have to play more perfect than everybody because his arm doesn't allow him to be, what a Josh Allen or a CJ Stroud or some of those other guys are, is what he said.
I traded a text the other day with Steve.
Did you and Matt have like a back and forth about this, just for my context?
Not that I remember. Maybe Jesse did, but I didn't have any back and forth with Matt. But I did have a back and forth with Steve. Steve is going to be coming on the Krueg show before the end of the season. I will debate the Purdy arm strength with Steve on that show.
Okay, beautiful. There we go.
What I don't think there's going to be much of a debate because Steve literally said, yeah, he can make most of the throws, or pretty much all the throws, but it's not, he can't throw late. He can't be late the way some of these other guys are. If he's late over the middle, he's getting picked. He has to be not only on time, but almost ahead of time. And I agree with him. I don't know why that's such a bad, it's not a bad thing. He didn't say it was a bad thing. He just said that's the reality of the skill set.
I mean, look at the way Brock plays. You guys saw the breakdown of the Aiyuk pass. He literally went to throw that to a spot before Aiyuk even got out of his break. So that is what Brock needs to do. And that is what Brock can do.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Some people can't do. He can throw to a spot with anticipation, but he has to, because he can't just zip it in there like some of the elite arm quarterbacks in the league can. I think that's
and that's all he was saying. That's pretty much all he was saying.
Flav says Dallas is going to blow this, so it won't matter. And Seattle is blowing their big upset on Dallas instead of Philly. This is awful.
What's the score here?
It's 35-30, and Dallas is driving. Seattle is winning 35-30. This game is actually electric. It turns out that if you give these guys a week to rest and you don't put Josh Dobbs versus Justin Fields on national TV, you can actually watch a good game.
What the heck? That game set NFL football back a decade. That was so brutal.
No. What set NFL football back a decade was the day before during the early slate. That 12 o'clock slate was brutal. Outside of Jags versus Texans, like Falcons Saints was a terrible game. Patriots Giants, nobody needed to watch that. That was good. Oh, look at this. This is really just Krueg versus the audience. The coach comes right back. He says, as long as you bring Herbert, he's in for the trade. Love this show, guys. I love that.
Coach
Matt
Tannehill and Herbert.
Dallas is yet to beat a winning team. Vish, it's McHugh win. LOL. There we go. So look at that. Larry, you should be in his good books. You were able to read his name.
I know some Irishmen.
Brother Bob just gives me $1.99. Thank you so much. Just to emphasize the coach's comment here. This is, again, a personal thing, I guess, between him and Larry tonight. Larry, if you would like to go back at Brother Bob here, let me know. I'll give you the floor. It's starting to become you versus him here.
I'll leave Brother Bob alone.
I'll send the link to Brother Bob. This could be the Krueg Brother Bob show for all I know at this point. Matt McEwen again says, okay, Jesse, let's try it here. D-line needs to go on Lane Johnson movement, not ball. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about Lane Johnson and that rocker step that he takes where the back foot is allowed to move, but he's clearly out of his stance? What do you think of that whole ordeal?
It's 100% a false start. I don't care what anybody says. It's funny how people have taken the rule, and you've got people that'll show the rule on camera and then talk about the rule and completely talk about the rule as if we can't read what the rule says.
Mhm.
It is a false start. There's no other way around it. That being said, I love what Matt is saying here, and he's jokingly bringing it up here because he's brought it up everywhere else, but he's right. Just go when Lane goes. There's nothing. If you're not going to call Lane on it, then you can go when he can go, and make the refs make a decision. Either allow them to let the play go and finish as is, or start calling the false starts.
And then, I mean, the guy who ought to be complaining the most is Kelsey. Kelsey got 2 false starts, and he just flinched with the ball. He had his hand on the ball, and he kind of just flinched with his hand on the ball, and they called a false start. So that is a false start, but a guy can literally take a step, and that's not a false start. I mean, it just, I've been watching football a long time. I've never seen a guy so Munoz and Walter Jones and all these badass offensive tackles, the greatest offensive tackles of all time, they all take a back seat to Lane Johnson. Because Lane Johnson has figured out a way to move faster than his movement doesn't count. And I mean, it's just, I don't know what the heck's going on there, but that is absolutely a false start.
Yeah, I agree. It's like an insult to our intelligence almost by telling us it's not a false start. Like we could all see him moving. And I hate it. I've never liked Lane Johnson, for the record. I'm not shocked that he ended up being the best tackle from that draft when him, Jokel, and Eric Fisher all went in the first 4 picks. But the guy, has been on some PEDs in the past. He's had some suspensions for that. His combine stats are still a little suspect to me that he's had PED suspensions, all of it. I'm not going to get into that, but it's definitely insulting when people try to explain that away as not a false start. Brother Bob says, Vish, be real. Did you want to slap PP on that one day? I'll tell you something about that one day. No, and here's why. In the Grant's training camp videos a couple of times, I saw the size and stature of Larry Krueger walking behind him a couple of times. Larry looks like just a normal looking guy in camera, but when you get to see him walking behind Grant, he's got some presence to him. Let me tell you, even if I got in an argument with Larry, the last thing I would want to do is get into a physical altercation. He's a big guy.
He was never going to get physical.
No, of course not. I'm joking. But yeah, it was all just in good fun. Matt McEwen, look at this. This is literally just that
like
versus Larry. Match. He says, how about Brandon Aiyuk studies?
He's gotten hot.
A lot. I said I wanted
touchdown production.
You know what you should do, Larry? This is where Grant really does it well. This is a moment for you to come out and say, I did this. I motivated him. I called him out and he put him in the end zone.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? You know what's really funny is that I don't have the nerve to go up to BA and actually ask him, because I do talk to him from time to time. But he definitely, after that show, the next time I was in the locker room, he gave me a look like, dude, you got into a gigantic argument about me. I'm not saying that he's honing in on our shows. That would be too arrogant, right? To be like, oh, Brandon Aiyuk's watching our live streams.
But I guarantee somebody relayed that to him.
Yeah,
I would not be
that's what it is. I doubt that they actually watch us, but family members probably catch snippets and then tell this person that, because it all just goes on social media. And that one got clipped around a little bit.
I've had people say to me, though, hey, bro, I've seen your show. So I know that some guys watch, but he definitely gave me a look that day like, I know all about what you were debating.
Oh, well.
So I don't know.
You motivated him.
Next time I get a chance to actually talk to him, not in such a group setting, I may ask him about it. But you know what? The guy is having a phenomenal year. And, he's been even better since our debate. And he made the point. He's like, what did he say? Like, real ballers show up in November and December. I'll say this, many guys in that room, when they're done with their talk, they'll go talk to the $25 million man. Go talk to the Kittle said it the other day. Go talk to Mr. 26 million over there. Brandon Aiyuk. So these guys want him to secure the bag.
And it's
big bag,
right? That they go 25 with Deebo making 28. Come on, say 30. Say 30 for the
Well,
guy.
Kittle said 26 the other day. So go talk to the $26 million man over there.
Brother Bob says, yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. I'll read it for you, Brother Bob, because you're so kind, but we got to move on. Niners Eagles is on the horizon, and we have Jessie Naylor for 6 more minutes, and then he's got to go to the airport.
I can go another 20. Their flight got pushed back a little bit, so we're okay.
Okay. We
I
got
till
Jessie
about
for
45.
20 more minutes. Look at that. He says, yeah, pig in a pickle. BA still sucks. What graded greater than Brock? Ha ha ha.
Nobody said he sucked.
Knees says Christian McCaffrey going to secure himself in the MVP race Sunday. I will say this, guys. For me, this is the MVP of football right now. This is the guy that's having the season that's MVP worthy. I don't know if you guys have been on Twitter. I spent way too much time in my workday debating Jalen Hurts MVP credentials. I don't understand how he's the MVP favorite this year. On normal criteria, other than best quarterback, best team, if that's the only criteria, which it's never been, it's always been numbers plus best quarterback, best team. That's when there becomes a criteria. But to me, Christian McCaffrey right now is the MVP of football. I'll kick it to you first, Jesse, on this one, because what do you think of that?
Yeah, I said it the other day. I think it's clear that CMC right now would be. The quarterback thing is interesting because I could legitimately make a case for 5 quarterbacks, and we could debate it. I think it's debatable. If we want to talk about Stroud, if we want to talk about Dak, if we want to talk about Hurts, if we want to talk about Lamar, if we want to talk about Purdy, any one of those 5, we could legitimately make an argument for. But it is a down year in quarterback play. It just is. Nobody's going for the 50 touchdowns. Nobody's going for 5,000 yards. It's a down year statistically. And when there's not a clear-cut quarterback, I think you should go with who I think has been the best player overall, and that is CMC. So, yeah, I think CMC right now should be the MVP.
Michael Lombardi went on the McAfee show and said he would give his vote to Purdy. I mean, you got to...
Who did? Sorry.
Michael Lombardi.
Oh.
I mean, I thought Myles Garrett was having an amazing year. I thought he deserved some consideration until he quieted down the last few weeks. I thought A.J. Brown has had almost an MVP type year, the way he had like 7 or 8 straight 100-yard days. I mean, how much do you put into the winning record? I mean, that's the thing. Philly's only lost once. They get the best record in football. Hurts has had a great year. I don't know. It's one of those things where you sometimes at this point in the year, you can kind of make a definitive statement. I think the only thing that we can really say at this point is that it's wide open because it's going to matter how all the top players finish in, it's November 30th, this thing's going to play through the end of December. So I would say CMC as we sit here today would get my vote, but it's not locked up. It's definitely not locked up.
I agree. It's open, and I agree that there's a lot of different candidates. Where I have an issue is how Hurts is somehow this like runaway favorite. Like he has this very clear MVP case. He has turned over the ball 14 times this season. He's fumbled it 4, I think. No, I think he has 9 picks, 6 fumbles. No, I think he has 10 picks, 4 fumbles.
He threw for 33 yards and 2 turnovers in the first half last week.
And then we credit him for being clutch in a game that most quarterbacks don't get to stay involved in if they play that poorly, right? Doesn't matter if he's clutch if they're losing by 30 because he had a terrible first half. But either way, 14 turnovers in the last 20 years, there's not been an MVP quarterback that's won the award that has 14 turnovers or more. There's been only one, and that was Manning in 2009, and that team did 2 things historic. One, they started 14-0. Only 3 different teams in NFL history to that point had started 14-0. Them, the 19-0 Patriots, 19-1 Patriots, or 18-1 Patriots, the 17-0 undefeated Miami Dolphins. So that was historic. 2, I don't think Manning should have won that MVP award. If there was ever an MVP award Brees should have won, it was 2009. And then 3, Manning had an NFL record at the time, 7 game-winning drives. So if we're going to use the Hurts' clutch agenda to say that he could break the turnover threshold that Manning broke, then he's going to have to be historic, in terms of his clutchness like Manning was. And he has not been that. To me, I don't get it. It feels like it's just an agenda push, and I saw the national media do it shamelessly for a week, where they criticized the one interception that Josh Allen threw and acted like, he's the mistake maker, he throws the game, blah 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 blah, when he was the reason his team was in that football game, and they stick on that one moment for Jalen Hurts when it's like, man. Hey, can Josh Allen's team keep him in the game and make plays for him so that he can be clutch too? Can his kicker make a 59-yard field goal to make him clutch?
Well, not only that, I mean, you've got a tremendous passing offense. I mean, who's got better combo receivers than Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown?
And when Goddard's healthy, he's excellent.
Right, and their passing offense is, 13th in the NFL? And that's in the MVP goes to the quarterback, who's turned the ball over a lot and has the 13th rated passing offense with great weapons.
I do want to say, to be fair, he also we can't just eliminate the rushing. I mean, he's on pace for 45 total touchdowns. Like that's
right.
It's a good season, but I think the point is that he's not a clear-cut MVP, and none of these quarterbacks are at this point.
Yeah, I certainly don't diminish his candidacy. He's amongst one of many candidates. My issue is with him being kind of pushed in our faces as this front runner, as this just quote unquote bang drop. Like everybody knows he's the MVP. I don't see it.
I agree. Last year he should have been the MVP, but this year
I thought Mahomes. I thought it was totally okay that Mahomes won it last year. But I agree. I think he had a better probably candidacy last year. Alan from Cole, shout out to him, says, where can I become a member? The link to become a member is in the description. Please do join. We'll have our call-in show every Tuesday night. And I hope you can join. I like chopping it up with you. I've seen the success of the Krueger call-in show. I've seen the success of the Jessie call-in show. In fact, I talked to Krug's favorite guy, Johnny C, on Tuesday. Johnny C was
from Vegas?
With the but Vish. Oh, yeah. He said, but Vish.
And not that he gets super close to the camera. He's like,
yeah,
but Vish.
And Johnny C had a stat for everything. I said, Johnny C, you need to get on YouTube.
I think Johnny C may gamble a lot.
Maybe, but he knew Johnny C was good stuff. He was good stuff.
He is.
The coach says, ooh, we're going right back. Here we go from my boy, the coach. He says, what we see as attributes and advantages for MJ were seen as contributors to the greatness of MJ back then. MJ literally made Pip pay homage. Okay, we'll have to add the coach to the show when this debate goes down.
So coach is saying MJ. He's saying MJ.
Pippen should have won a championship in Portland. They got jobbed by the refs in Game 7. Maybe that's a homer take because I'm a Blazer fan, but that was a horrible officiated
They got
game.
jobbed in 94 too. Everybody talks about the play he sits down, but in Game 6, Hugh Hollins, terrible call on Scottie Pippen on a 3-point shot.
You know what? Can I admit what one bias I have in the Jordan thing?
Sure.
I'm biased for Jordan because in my mind, Jordan did it the right way. He got drafted to a horrendous loser and made them a dynasty where I don't respect LeBron as much because it's like he called a press conference to kick his hometown in the nuts. And I just don't respect that. And I don't like the fact that he jumps from winner to winner to winner to winner. It's like he left Cleveland when he couldn't win there. Then he went to the super team in Miami. When that fizzled out, then it's like, let's get out of here. Where Jordan made the place where he was a winner, where LeBron kind of cherry picked.
Yeah, but if he stayed in Cleveland, those guys weren't coming there.
And the letter that Dan Gilbert writes when he leaves was very unbecoming of Dan Gilbert,
that was
saying that he quit in that Game 6 versus Boston, all of that. That was messed up.
But that whole coming home, that whole with all the the lighters.
I think that was Melo. Melo hit Diddy in coming home, right? On when he went back to New York. I think LeBron, the coming home was done a little differently, maybe.
The decision. Yeah,
the decision was messed up. I'm with you on that one.
And then, like in the 11th hour, it's like, hey, wait a second, we're donating money to the Boys and Girls Club. It's like, all right. I just really think that, like Steph Curry got drafted to the lowly Warriors, and he made them great. And then LeBron, I mean, the Bulls sucked when the Bulls were just Artis Gilmore and a bunch of Orlando Woolridge and nothing. I mean, they had nothing until Jordan. They had a bunch of guys doing drugs. And then all of a sudden Jordan shows up and he made them. I don't know. I
agree with you. I agree with you on that. I agree with
Cleveland
you.
Was pretty awful before and after LeBron as well. Like,
Yeah.
right, the immediate years
have
before and the immediate years after.
He came back.
Yeah. He just moved around to some winners. That's all.
Didn't Jordan have George Gervin on his team though as a rookie? Like, come on, no credit for the
yeah,
Iceman
but that
at,
wasn't
like,
George Gervin. George Gervin, come on,
48-year-old Iceman.
Yeah,
Alan had Artis Gilmore too.
Says he also did have Carlos Boozer. He says, who's y'all's MVP right now? I think we hit it. I think all three of us said CMC. Dazza0187 says, I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback, but how much faith do you have in him leading a comeback down, a touchdown in the fourth quarter against the Eagles, Chiefs, Ravens? I guess we'll compound this and do two topics as one. So is this, quote unquote, what is your confidence level in this? And then what's kind of your biggest concern point with this game for the 49ers? Or is this your concern point? The fact that we haven't necessarily seen Purdy in a situation like this and we're projecting on how he would do. I'll start with you, Larry, on this one.
Well, I know everybody groups this as a Purdy concern, but this to me is really supersedes Purdy. I think this goes back before Purdy to Shanahan. I just feel like Shanahan is a genius, great coach, but he's got to get it his way. It's got to happen his way. I don't know that he can win a bunch of different ways. He's got to get a lead, establish a little run game, play action pass off of that, and then kind of pour it on and get a big lead and coast home. I don't know that he can, win a grimy game and under pressure, make all the right calls. And, I don't know. In some ways, I feel like that's Kyle's final frontier is that can he show that he can keep his nerve, call a great game, a balanced, hard-fought, tight game against a truly great team where he might have to come from 10 down under pressure. I don't know. I know it groups under Purdy, but in reality, the one thing that we don't talk about that much is that, Purdy hasn't led these big fourth quarter comebacks, but like out of how many games, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, he came back against the Raiders. He could have came back against the Browns, but how many times did he not do it? It's not a big number. They're both really, really low numbers. I agree. Brock's got to prove that he can win in the fourth quarter against a good team coming from behind, but he hasn't had that many opportunities. I mean, where has he fallen short? Maybe 2 times, 3 times. It's not very many. So where Shanahan's got a much bigger sample size, and I think we're talking about offensive coordinator in Atlanta, the Chiefs Super Bowl. I mean, the one that just bothers me, and I can't even get my arms around it. Halftime of the Super Bowl against Kansas City, Deebo had touched the ball, I think, like 8 times and was on pace to be the MVP. He got 2 touches in the second half for a guy that you can hand the ball to and run end arounds to. So when I asked Shanahan about it afterwards, he's like, well, that's not necessarily how it's done. But then when the Niners got into the NFC Championship game against the Rams and they got into their gotta have it moment, it was Stafford to Cup, Stafford to Cup, Stafford to Cup. How come McVay could get Cup the ball when he had to have it, but the Niners couldn't get Deebo touches in the second half of a game where he dominated in the first half? So I don't know. To me, it's the final frontier for Shanahan.
Jesse.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly where I was going. And it's not just Shanahan. I just look at it as a team. I think when you look at a regular season is all about preparation for the playoffs. And how many times can you get yourself into curious situations and figure it out or not figure it out? But either way, you learn from it. The 49ers in general haven't been in a lot of tight games. And the ones that they haven't won. So that's a little bit concerning. Doesn't mean they can't do it or won't do it in the playoffs, but it would be nice to see them do it against one of these teams down the stretch, even if it's not the Eagles or Ravens Hopefully it's one of those teams that does it, because I think it makes it a little bit more impressive and makes it easier to feel confident about it. But I would like to see the 49ers in this situation not front running to big leads, because we know that they can win in those situations. But we also know that if they're going to win a Super Bowl, at some point the game is going to be tight. They are likely going to have to come from behind or hold the team off either way. And I want to see them in those situations before I feel fully confident that they can get it done.
Yeah, I'm gonna shock you guys. I'm gonna go 3 for 3 and agree 100% across the board. Specifically, and the reason I phrased that question this way is because this is a concern for me specifically for this game. I think Brock Purdy is going to have a lot of success throwing the football in this game. Like, I don't think the Eagles secondary is that good. I think there's a lot of open opportunities, and they've been killing it in the pass game the entire year. My concern is, as much as we comment on, the Eagles have won close games and all of that this year, the one thing that I do think they do from a coaching standpoint to maximize their opportunities in this game is they have a clear-cut identity on how they're going to play. They're aggressive. If it's 4th and 2, 4th and 1, whatever, they're going for it on 4th down. The entire team knows it. That's their identity. So statistically, they're always maximizing their opportunity to win the close games by making analytically aggressive decisions. So now they're increasing probability. When you increase your probability to win a game and you have the more talented team on the field 95, 98% of the time, which Philadelphia does, that's why they're able to come ahead week after week in these close games, even against really good quarterbacks that usually win these kinds of games, like the Mahomes, like the Allens. Why this is important to me in this game, specific to Shanahan, is Shanahan doesn't have an identity on whether he wants to be aggressive or not. He goes off of his feel. And sometimes in games like this, his feel, he can start to get a little bit conservative. He can start to look like he doesn't necessarily have full control of the situation. And I think his team can look a little bit, not lost, but a little bit out of sorts in a situation where they have a lead and they should hold it and stuff like that. And so, I'm with you guys. For me, the number one concern is Shanahan. I'm not so concerned by that record. To me, if you don't have a truly great quarterback, right, you have a Jimmy Garoppolo who started the majority of games for yourself in that kind of year, it's very tough to come back from 7 down in the fourth quarter, come back from 3 down in the second half. It's tough to do that. McVay's record used to be terrible in those kinds of situations pre-Stafford with Goff. So I understand that. But in general, in terms of Shanahan's decisions, in terms of his game management, in terms of whether he'll be aggressive or not, to me, it is a concern, guys. I'm 100% with you. That's the bigger concern. I think we'll see this stuff play out with Brock over the course of his career, and the way he plays and the poise he shows. I don't know that it's a concern that he's going to lose himself in those kinds of situations. To me, the bigger question is, hey, the other team knows exactly what they're doing. In every close game, they're not going to be phased because they know exactly how they go about it. Shanahan goes off of his feel oftentimes in those situations, and I think sometimes his emotions cloud his judgment. And so I'm with you guys. That is the concern for me as well.
I'd like to
Cowboys
see
just beat the Seahawks, by the way.
I know.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
There's one play
Awful
that I'd
ending.
like to
Seattle
see.
blew it.
Wow, 41. Wow.
Yeah.
There's one play I'd like to see Shanahan change up, and that is lately. Now, this is just, I don't have the stats in front of me. I'm just going on my sense of it. But my sense of it is that when it gets to 2nd and 1, he's been running the ball. That to me, 2nd and 1 is a time to go down.
Play action, take your shot. That's Bruce Arians right there.
Yeah, take your shot. And that's like the opposite of the Eagles. I think the Eagles, if they ever get to 2nd and 1, they are taking their shot. And the one thing I would like, because they know they're gonna run it or push it on 4th down, they're gonna get their yard and stay on the field. Shanahan oftentimes gets conservative in 2nd and 1 and starts to run it. I'd love to see them be more aggressive on 2nd and 1 in this game.
I'm 100% with you. All right, guys, I'm going to speed run through the rest of these supers, and then we're going to get Jesse out of here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to both you, Larry and Jesse, for joining me. This was a great show. It was great to be back with the two of you on a Thursday. I'll tell you, I missed it. I missed having the game here on my phone, talking to the two of you. This was awesome. I can't wait for Sunday. So Matt McEwen, Jesse pointed it out, the backup free safety as well.
No, he's just saying the backup is false starting as well. Yeah. If you watch that last game, it was all over the place.
Yeah. I saw you tweeted about that. I saw that. Brother Bob, come on, Brother Bob. Let's have enough of that one. Green Glass Full. Let's keep it a little bit respectful. I'm not going to read that one. I'm not going to read super chats with slurs in them. Come on, man. We could keep it better. Same thing with you too, brother Bob. The Krug stuff is funny, but you can't go 8 times, 9 times in a show, man. Like we got to keep it a little under wraps. But I appreciate the support for both of you. But come on. Daza, again, appreciate the support. He said, when's the last time a defensive player won that MVP award? Why not Garrett for MVP? I think the last time is Lawrence Taylor, right?
Who was the last defensive player to win the MVP?
Lawrence Taylor.
It's the only, right?
I think so.
Really? Okay. God,
I
didn't realize we're going back to 80, going back to the early 80s for that. No defensive player has won the MVP since the early 80s. Is that true?
Yeah, I think J.J. Watt got in the MVP conversation. I remember that. But I think Lawrence Taylor, that 1986 season, is the only one, right?
Alan Page in 71. I just looked it up. And Lawrence Taylor in 86.
Okay. I did not know about Alan Page in 71.
Lawrence Taylor's rookie year was incredible too.
Yeah, he was in the conversation, right? He won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie, right? He was Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie, right?
I believe so. The same year had Ronnie Lott.
The main thing I was trying to think is, who are the defensive players in our lifetime that would have had like seasons and longevity to even accumulate
White,
that?
maybe.
It would be Reggie White, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald after Lawrence Taylor, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as individual, I'm have to think who was a Dion, maybe. Dion had some years where he took multiple pick sixes. I don't know.
Right. Strahan's had in the sack record.
Strahan, even though that was fraudulent.
But that one was with Brett Favre falling for him and all that. By the way, the Fox halftime crew, my least communal show of characters. I don't like Howie. I don't like Kurt. I really don't like Terry. I don't care for Jimmy and Michael. I wouldn't care if he was on the show either. That's the worst show to me. No hate there. Actually, a lot of hate there, but yeah. Brother Bob says, I have a fan in green. You need some love. Yeah. I shouldn't even have pulled that up. We don't need to go there, Brother Bob. I didn't read the comment. We can leave it there. Matt McEwen agrees with you, Jesse. He says Hurts should have won MVP last year. Alan from Coles, appreciate you joining and becoming a member. Brother Bob just sends his nose and an underscore. I don't know what that means, buddy.
I know what it means, but we'll leave that for.
I now know what it means.
Yeah, okay, now you know what Bob. It means too.
Okay, I shouldn't have pulled. This is a family show, Brother Bob. My mom watches this from time to time. Okay, my mom watches this, so let's keep it respectful. The coach says Brock's nerve is going to expose Kyle. So he's, I think, on the wave with us, where our biggest concern is Kyle as well. Flav says step one complete. Niners win this weekend, and we have a shot to be back at the driver's seat next week. Let's go. I agree with him. Seattle just blew this game. Bad looks for Geno. I think that kind of might have signed and sealed his chance at being Seattle's starter next year. Dallas's offense looked good. Dak looked good. CeeDee Lamb looked good. But yeah, it does put the Niners in good situation. And then Daza, I think this is in regards to our defensive player of the year conversation, or defensive MVP conversation. He says Ray Lewis ? And maybe 2000 Ray Lewis, we should have thrown in there. I was also thinking Derek Brooks in 2002 because he had the 4 pick sixes as a linebacker. But yeah.
Sapp, Simeon Rice. There's a lot of great players on those 2002 Bucks, 2000 Ravens.
Hey, let me ask you this before we go. The way the 02 Bucks all ended up getting in outside of Simeon Rice, do you think that happens to the Legion of Boom Seahawks? We know Sherman, I think, will get in. We know Wagner will get in.
Browner will not because of his off-field stuff.
He won't. Yeah, but
Browner
when we're talking, I think Earl Thomas, Sherman, and Wagner are guaranteed. Then the other two that are the question mark, they were those kinds of players, are Chancellor and Mike Bennett, right?
Well, I don't think either of those get in.
You don't think Chancellor gets in?
I thought that too, but then watching, I thought, okay, Brooks Sapp on that Bucks defense, but then Rondé ended up getting in. John Lynch got in. I wouldn't be shocked if Simeon Rice gets thrown in. They're all ending up getting in. Eventually, I mean, when you look at that defense, Chancellor's legacy won't be missed on it. And then Bennett was a dominant front player at the time.
They were so good that year. I mean, but it wasn't long lasting.
Yeah, it was only 5 years.
I would say Earl was probably the most special of that group.
Yeah, I agree with you.
In my mind.
The draft with him and Eric Berry. What a safety draft, huh? 2010.
Hey, we never touched the Ertz deal. What do you?
Okay.
What's your guys' thoughts on Ertz? Because, I don't know how you guys feel, but the Niners have a ton of cap room, and man, to me, the Niners in 2020, when they had Kittle and Jordan Reed for a very short amount of time, had a 2 tight end look that was truly dynamic. I know Ertz can't block, and I know he had an injury earlier this year, but he is a Danville kid. He went to Monte Vista. The Eagles need him. They're probably waiting for him to clear waivers. You have to pay the prorated of 11.6. I think it's going to be about $2.5 million if you claim him off waivers. I think I'd be willing to claim him off waivers.
I would too.
I'm with you. I think he fills a need. I don't think they've gotten great contribution from Charlie Warner, Ross Dwelly. I'm with you. What about you, Jesse?
Absolutely, I would. And if nothing else, to block 2 other teams that are right behind him that certainly could use him, and that's the Ravens and the Eagles. I mean, the Ravens lost there, and you've got to play both these teams. If you let him get to the Eagles or let him clear waivers, he may suit up for the Eagles this week. If not, he may go to the Ravens, and then you got to face him in a couple weeks. I mean, not that he's the scariest tight end in the world at this stage in his career, but he's certainly helping both of those teams and where they're at.
And he would help the Niners.
And he's a good receiver.
Way better than any tight end too on the Niners as a receiver.
Yeah.
Ricky Williams, and this will be the last comment of the night. He says the Seahawks tonight, SMH. Flav, last super chat right here. He goes Dallas minus 2.5 versus Philly as of now. So if Vegas is correct, we will be first in the NFC after next weekend. I feel good about the Cowboys in that game. I think that'll be a very interesting game as well. We'll talk about it then that week.
The Niners got to get past the Ravens in a couple weeks if they want to keep that number 1 seed. So
I agree. A lot to talk about. Appreciate everybody. This was a fantastic show. A lot of contributions. Appreciate the chat for communicating, participating. Larry, Jesse, thank you so much. Go Niners this weekend, and we'll be back next week to break it all down. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Peace.